Picture this: you're at a crossroads, both literally and figuratively. You've been searching for work for months, each application like a message in a bottle cast into the vast ocean of job markets, waiting for anyone to pick it up. The government benefits you've relied on have kept the roof over your head and food on the table, but just barely. Bills are piling up, hope is wearing thin, and you're counting coins to make it through another day. Then, out of the blue, your phone rings, and on the other end is the sound of opportunity, a job offer. For a moment, relief washes over you like the first rays of sunlight after a storm. You imagine the stability, the independence, the pride of earning your way again. But as the details sink in, the dream begins to crack. Your new income, while a step forward, disqualifies you from the benefits that kept you afloat. Worse, the paycheck doesn't stretch far enough to cover essentials like rent, utilities, or childcare expenses that now rise with the need for work-related transportation and other costs. Somehow, despite landing a job, you find yourself poorer than before. This paradox is not just a cruel twist of fate. It's a phenomenon economists call the welfare trap. And while this specific trap may feel like a modern problem, its roots are tangled deep within the complex systems of human societies. To truly understand this conundrum, we must unravel layers of history, psychology, sociology, and politics. Poverty traps are not isolated phenomena, but rather intricate webs of cause and effect. They ensnare individuals, families, and even entire nations in cycles of deprivation that seem impossible to escape. But what makes the welfare trap uniquely disheartening is its origin. Policies designed to lift people out of poverty often inadvertently reinforce it. It's as if the very ladder intended to help people climb higher is missing rungs, or worse, leads them in circles. Think about what this does to the human spirit. Imagine striving to improve your circumstances only to find that every step forward feels like 2 steps back. This isn't just financially draining, it's psychologically devastating. In psychological terms, this phenomenon can create learned helplessness, a state where repeated failures or perceived futility lead individuals to stop trying altogether. People caught in these traps often face judgment from society, labeled as lazy or unmotivated, when in reality, they are navigating a system that punishes effort. And yet, the welfare trap is not merely an economic or psychological issue. It's deeply embedded in the social fabric. Poverty, after all, is never just about money. It's about access or the lack thereof to resources, opportunities, and networks. It's about the invisible barriers that separate haves from have-nots, creating parallel realities within the same society. For those outside the trap, it's easy to say, why don't they just get a job? But for those inside, the choices often feel like a lose-lose game. Stay dependent on a flawed system or risk drowning without it. From a sociological perspective, welfare traps are a stark reminder of how policies designed for one purpose can have unintended consequences. Means-tested programs, for instance, are built on the premise that aid should go to those who need it most. On paper, this sounds logical, even fair, but in practice, the rigid income thresholds often create a cliff effect, where earning just a few extra dollars results in the sudden loss of critical benefits. This creates a perverse incentive structure, where staying below the threshold feels safer than climbing above it. This brings us to a fundamental tension in policy design: how to balance efficiency with equity. Policies are crafted in boardrooms and government chambers, often by people far removed from the realities of poverty. They rely on data, projections, and economic models that assume humans are rational actors, always optimizing for maximum utility. But as behavioral economists have shown time and again, humans are anything but purely rational. We are emotional, social, and deeply influenced by our environment. Take, for example, the role of status anxiety in decision-making. Anthropologists have long noted that human societies, regardless of culture or era, are organized around hierarchies. Even in so-called egalitarian societies, there are subtle markers of status that influence behavior. For someone navigating a welfare trap, the stigma of receiving government aid can weigh heavily. This isn't just about pride. It's about the social pressure to conform to societal norms of self-sufficiency and success. Meanwhile, political scientists might point to the broader systemic forces at play. Welfare traps are not merely the result of poorly designed policies. They are a reflection of deeper structural inequalities. In many cases, these traps disproportionately affect marginalized groups, reinforcing cycles of exclusion and disenfranchisement. The intersection of race, gender, and socio-economic status often creates overlapping layers of disadvantage, making escape even more challenging. And then there's the question of power. Who decides how welfare programs are structured? Who benefits from the status quo? And who pays the price? These are not just technical questions, but profoundly political ones. Policies are shaped by competing interests, ideologies, and narratives about what kind of society we want to build. The welfare trap, in this sense, is not just an economic issue, but a mirror reflecting our collective values or lack thereof. But let's not lose sight of the human stories behind the statistics. Each person caught in a welfare trap has a unique journey, shaped by their hopes, fears, and resilience. Some fight against the odds, carving out paths that defy expectations. Others find themselves overwhelmed by a system that feels indifferent at best and hostile at worst. What unites them all is a desire for a better life, not just for themselves, but for their families and communities. This brings us to the question, what can be done? The solutions are as complex as the problem itself. Some advocate for gradual benefit reductions rather than abrupt cutoffs, allowing people to transition smoothly as their income rises. Others propose universal benefits, such as free healthcare, childcare, or education, that are available to all regardless of income. These approaches aim to reduce the stigma of welfare while ensuring broader access to essential services. And then there's the idea of universal basic income (UBI), a radical rethinking of how society supports its members. By providing a guaranteed income to everyone, UBI eliminates welfare traps altogether. No more income thresholds, no more cliff effects, just a stable foundation upon which people can build their lives. Critics argue that UBI is too expensive or could discourage work, but pilot programs have shown promising results, from improved mental health to increased entrepreneurship. Ultimately, breaking the cycle of poverty requires more than just better policies. It demands a cultural shift. We need to move away from narratives that blame individuals for systemic problems, and instead focus on empowering people to achieve their full potential. This means investing in education, creating inclusive economic opportunities, and fostering a sense of community that transcends divisions. At its heart, the welfare trap is a story about humanity, our flaws, our resilience, and our capacity for change. It challenges us to think beyond short-term fixes and to envision a world where everyone has the tools and opportunities to thrive. This is not just an economic imperative, but a moral one. Because when we lift others, we rise together.